Week 10 of the fantasy football season, and he is running back start sits this week. First starts Jahmyr Gibbs of the Detroit Lions. I know David Montgomery might come back in this game, but after what we saw from Gibbs over the last 2 weeks, we had 25 or more fantasy points in PPR weeks. He's got a good matchup with the Los Angeles Chargers. We know their defense isn't all that great, and we know Jahmyr Gibbs is an explosive running back that can catch the football out of the backfield, already one of the best pass catchers in the league at the position, and a guy with home run ability, and we saw it on Monday Night Football in Week 8 versus the Vegas Raiders. So this week here with a good matchup versus a defense that's vulnerable to giving up the big plays, I got Gibbs once again as a start. Next start, Jonathan Taylor of the Indianapolis Colts. So Jonathan Taylor, the last few weeks, he's starting to get things going. He scored a touchdown at 17 PPR fantasy points in last week's victory at the Carolina Panthers. And this week here, it's another Germany game versus the New England Patriots. So I think Jonathan Taylor in this one's going to get good workload. Zach Moss, he only had 7 carries in last week's game, but also as well, that Colt defense made a lot of plays with 2 pick sixes in that one. So right now, Taylor, he's been a solid number 2 running back over the last few weeks, and I like him as a start. Javonte Williams, the next start for me. This Buffalo Bill defense banged up with a lot of injuries this season. Daquan Jones out for the year. Matt Milano out for the season. Von Miller still not 100%. And Tre'Davious White as well out for the season. So right now we saw a good run game by Joe Mixon and the Cincinnati Bengals in Week 9. And I think Javonte Williams, he's getting healthy as the weeks have gone on. We saw before the bye week in that great victory versus the Kansas City Chiefs, Javonte Williams have a big ball game. So this week here, on paper, I know it's a tough game for Williams and this Bronco team going to Buffalo. But coming off the bye week and getting even healthier, I think he has another good game. And as a start, Tony Pollard of the Dallas Cowboys the next start as well. Tony Pollard this season, besides the first 2-3 weeks of the year, we really haven't seen much out of Tony Pollard. And once again, a mediocre to pedestrian game for him versus the Philadelphia Eagles. But this week here, great matchup versus the New York Giants coming to town. And we know this Giant team, one of the worst teams in the league. We know they're depleted. And this Cowboy team, they're going to get off most likely to an early start, where they could just run the football a whole lot in the second half. So right now, Tony Pollard, the explosiveness isn't there like it was last season. I don't think he's really 100% as well coming off of that ankle injury where he had surgery and came back pretty quick, where he got hurt, obviously, in the second round of the playoffs last season. But this week here with a good matchup versus a depleted Giant team, he's a start, especially at home as well. Next start's James Cook of the Buffalo Bills. So James Cook, there's some games he has good games and games where it's just Josh Allen throwing the football and running it a whole lot, like we saw in the Week 9 loss versus at the Cincinnati Bengals. So right here, James Cook, their best wide receiving back out of the backfield. This week, a good matchup versus the Denver Broncos, even though their defense has improved a little bit over the last few weeks. But I still think James Cook could go out there, put up numbers. He's been a solid number 2 running back for fantasy owners on the season. And this Buffalo team, they've lost some bad games this season where they got to bounce back. So I think they're going to try to establish the run a little bit more here and not just keep the ball in Josh Allen's hands for 80% of the game like they did in last week's game. So James Cook is a start for me. Jerome Ford, the next start. So Jerome Ford, he's a dynamic running back. He catch the ball out of the backfield. He's got home run hitting ability as well, where he could take one to the house anytime, anywhere with his breakaway speed. And I know it's a tough matchup at the Baltimore Ravens. And the last 2 teams coming in over there in Baltimore who are good teams, the Detroit Lions and the Seattle Seahawks, that got blown out in both those games. But Jerome Ford and this Cleveland team, obviously familiar with Baltimore being in the division and versus them twice this season. I think Jerome Ford could have a nice grinded out type of game, especially in PPR leagues. He's a decent pass catcher out of the backfield as well. So I would give him a start this week. In the final start, Rachaad White of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So the last 2 weeks, Rachaad White's really getting things going. And we know he had 50 catches last season as a rookie out of the backfield. So he's catching the ball well out of the backfield as White. He found the end zone twice in last week's ball game for this Tampa Bay Buc team. And he's been a big part of this offense. So Tampa Bay's offense is moving the football well. I know it's a tougher matchup for running backs versus Tennessee. But like I said, with Rachaad White, his receiving prowess definitely adds a lot. So this week, once again, I have him as a start. Now to the sits, Kareem Hunt of the Cleveland Browns. So Kareem Hunt, he's pretty much been a touchdown-dependent running back this season here, which is perfectly fine. But this week in a tough matchup at Baltimore, where at home they don't give up a lot of touchdowns, I think it's going to be more Jerome Ford I think they're going to get off to an early start as Baltimore, and they're going to have to pass the football a lot with Jerome Ford. In that aspect, will be on the field. I know Kareem Hunt could catch the football out of the backfield, but Ford is more the passing down, third down, and elusive back more than Kareem Hunt. And Hunt, at this point of his career, obviously lost a step or two as well. I know in his Kansas City Chiefs days, he had some big receiving ball games, but this week here, Baltimore, in a game script, I don't think will really favor him. He's a sit. Zach Moss, the next sit as well. I know this game's in Germany, and I know Zach Moss has played good football this season, but last week, we saw him get 7 carries and only finish the day with 26 yards. So right now, New England, I know their defense is banged up. I know they really haven't stopped many teams this season as this Patriot team. But Zach Moss, we know, is the backup running back to Jonathan Taylor. The last week with the touches by both guys, obviously it was Jonathan Taylor's backfield, where in previous weeks, it was a 50-50 split for the most part. So Taylor worked his way back into shape now for this Indianapolis Colts team. And Zach Moss, possibly his fantasy value is up at this time. The next hit, A.J. Dillon of the Green Bay Packers. Aaron Jones finally had that nice game, and he looked pretty healthy with Aaron Jones as well. So A.J. Dillon, we know, is an in-between-the-tackles type of runner, physical running back, and he can catch the ball decent out of the backfield as well. But his numbers really haven't translated this season, besides one solid game this year. And this week, a tough matchup at the Pittsburgh Steelers, one of the better run defenses in the league. I don't see A.J. Dillon doing much. This is going to be a game where I think this tough Pittsburgh defense, they try to put the ball in Jordan Love's hand and stack the box, and that's the game plan I would do, because Jordan Love, he really hasn't done much over the last few weeks. I know they beat the Los Angeles Rams 20-3, but that's not saying much with backup quarterback Brett Rypien in there. So right now, A.J. Dillon, I don't see him doing much in this game. Versus a tough defense on the road, he's a sit. Roschon Johnson, he's a sit for me as well. D'Onta Foreman has looked like the better running back out of the backfield for this Bear team. And I don't know, Foreman's not a third down or passing downs back, but Roschon, the last 2 weeks since he's been back in the lineup, he really hasn't put up fantasy points. And Foreman's looked better, and also as well, Khalil Herbert, there's a possibility he could come back in this game as well. So I know it's a good matchup versus the Carolina Panthers. Their defense really don't stop anyone. We saw Jonathan Taylor, like I say, have a good game last week. But Roschon Johnson, he really hasn't seen touches the last few weeks here. And with Foreman playing good, and possibly, like I said, on Thursday night, there's a chance Herbert could come back. He's a sit for me. Sticking in that Thursday night game, Chuba Hubbard, a sit for me as well. So Miles Sanders worked his way back into the backfield over there for this Carolina Panther team. And Sanders, he looked pretty good in the touches he got, and Blackshear got touches as well in the backfield. So right now it's a messy situation over there at that Carolina running back room. I know it's a good matchup with the Chicago Bears, where their defense hasn't stopped anyone all season, pretty much running or catching the football. But right now, Chuba Hubbard, it's like a 3-man committee, and you don't really want any part of that this week, so he's a sit. Saquon Barkley, the next sit for me as well. This Giant team depleted. Darren Waller, he's out several weeks with the injury. We know Daniel Jones most likely torn that ACL. His foot just got caught in that turf in that game. And Tyrod Taylor as well. So it looks like DeVito is going to be the quarterback unless the Giants sign a veteran or call Matt Barkley up for the practice squad. But either way, I don't see Saquon Barkley doing much in this week's game. I know Barkley's going to get force-fed with touches and stuff. But, you know, this Dallas Cowboy team, one of the better defenses in the league, they're going to zero in on stopping Barkley and make whoever the quarterback's going to be this week. If it's going to be DeVito, Barkley, or someone else not in the organization, maybe a Carson Wentz is something the Giants bring in. I don't see Barkley doing much because, like I said, any defense at this point would stack the box and just pinpoint out Saquon and make whoever the quarterback is try to beat him with limited weapons as well. On the final sits Alexander Mattison of the Minnesota Vikings. So Madison, he had a great game, no doubt about it. 17.5 fantasy points in the Week 9 victory at the Atlanta Falcons. But this week here, tougher matchup versus New Orleans Saints that has a stout defense. And Cam Akers hurt as well, where he's out now. But still, Alexander Mattison, if he didn't have that 47-yard catch, which is obviously fluky for him because he don't really catch a lot of passes out of the backfield. And also now with Joshua Dobbs at starting quarterback, some goal line work will be taken away as well from here for Madison. Dobbs obviously likes running that football within the 10. So with those factors and a tough matchup versus the Saints, I have him as a sit this week. So that's running back start sits for Week 10 of the fantasy football season.